welcome you all to Trek Wars. Alright, so we're going to take a look at Klingon torpedoes. So we're going to be looking at the different launchers that the Klingon Empire had. We'll be looking at older launchers, we'll be looking at modern launchers, we'll be looking at the launchers that were seen during the Dominion War to get an understanding of Klingon doctrine and how it changed over the years because of the enemies that it came across and its adaptation to these new environments. So with that being said, we're going to take a look at the very first launcher. Alright, so the very first launcher is obviously the Klingon bird of prey. It's got a KP2 power output 65, not very impressive, volleys 1. So obviously when it comes to power projection, the ship is not projecting power whatsoever when it comes to long distance attacks. Obviously we all know the bird of prey has a cloaking device. It's used to be up close and personal. So its KP2 is basically just there just so it has long distance capabilities, but it's built not really around it at all. Alright, so if you look at a typical Klingon wing, it's going to be 3 ships. We got 3 ships here. As you can see, the projection of power is not very good. So we'll take a look at the Katanga next. Just to let you guys know, the projection of power here is equivalent to 1 Katanga. So we know that this torpedo launcher is unimpressive to say the least. Alright, so next on our list is the Katanga's KP5. It has a volley of 3 and it has power level of 65,000. So this, from a long distance, is going to be able to outgun about 90% of the Federation starships that it's coming across. So the Constitutions, the Mirandas, the destroyers, the cruisers, all those are going to get outgunned from long distance by this ship because of this torpedo launcher. The only exceptions to this is there are torpedo frigates the Federation has that are very rare. They have multi-launchers, and if this ship obviously came across a new generation ship like a dreadnought, like obviously the Excelsior, it can't take an Excelsior from long distance. But because of that additional torpedo that it's getting from this high volley, it could probably outgun a Constitution from long distance. So imagine a fleet taking on a Federation fleet. So we have 3 squads. We have a squad of Katangas and then 2 squads of Borels. So Borels are going to do very little against most Federation starships. Most Federation starships have shields around 390,000 projection. So if you think about that, that's 6 torpedoes. So that means that 2 Katangas working simultaneously together could destroy the shields of a Constitution class, which is obviously a Federation cruiser. And that 3rd Katanga can hit that ship directly, hitting its hull, could do significant damage, if not cripple the ship. So in a long distance attack, Katangas are definitely going to take the win. They are a long distance projection. Now you reverse that, imagine Borels having to take on a couple Constitution classes and they can fire 1 torpedo. You know, it's going to take them having to charge up the torpedo twice and then just to, take down the shields. By that time, they have fired at least 4 torpedoes and they have significantly damaged one of those ships. So back and forth, you can see that obviously a Borel is going to lose to a Constitution class. It has no chance. A Katanga can take on a Constitution class. So obviously the Federation isn't just going to sit around and allow this to happen. So they did design ships to offset this. So a prime example of this, and the one that I'm most familiar with, is the Constellation class. So the Constellation class is capable of launching 6 torpedoes. So that means that this ship has the firepower of 2 Katangas. So with that being said, the Klingon Empire then became at a serious disadvantage because the Katanga is really the only ship that it has that can project long-distance torpedo technology. So this obviously becomes an issue because the same launcher that's being used by the Borel is being used by its bigger cousin, the K-Vort. So the K-Vort are really big ships. They're around the same size as an Excelsior, slightly smaller than an Excelsior. Now, they don't have as much armor as an Excelsior, and they don't have nearly as much firepower. And at long distance, these ships are really falling behind. because they only have 2 launchers. So this ship, which is the size of a Excelsior class, has the long distance capabilities of just a standard Constitution. So you can see that the Klingon Empire had a problem, and how they fixed this problem was by inventing a brand new launcher. And so what we get here, and before you get too excited, this is a 2nd generation, and this is not particularly great. So the KP6 has a power of 65,000. It can have a volley of 8. Now, the reason why I'm saying that that's not particularly that impressive, because this is obviously much better than anything we've seen before, this is a 2nd generation launcher. So what I mean by that is most ships have a power level of 171,000 per shot. They're still using old technology, but we have modified it. And this was designed because the Klingon Empire had a serious issue when it came to projection of long-distance power, which is something that's going to happen when 2 fleets are coming together and you're not, surprising one another with cloaking devices or anything of that nature. When you have to have combat on combat and we know what's seen when the ships are coming in and they're engaging one another, the Klingon Empire needed something that could project long-distance power. And then, unfortunately, this is what they came up with due to Klingon technology having a period of stagnation. So, when the Praxis moon exploded, the Klingon Empire went into debt. And so, technology and creation of ships stagnated. And so, this version of the Burrell is honestly due to stagnation. Because during this time period, most Federation starships are using multi-shot launchers. We have, normal ships which are using, your standard launchers, but they have new ordnance and new torpedoes. They're coming very close to the amount of damage that this thing can do, but we'll take a look at it. So, like I said, this technology was developed probably around the 2350s, maybe almost the 2360s. We see this ship during Deep Space Nine. We don't really see it very often. They weren't produced in large numbers, but they are there with the Klingon fleet. So at 520,000 power projection, even though it's using an older launcher, it's projecting a decent amount of firepower. And the Klingon Empire desperately needed this long-range power projection. I want to show you an example of this power projection actual in play. All right, so we're looking at this Federation fighter. It's trying to run away from one of these birds of prey. You can see it fired 4, and then it loads another 4, and it fires again right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're getting 8 projection. All right, so now we can kind of look at what the Klingon fleet had, like what it was using. So you would have had these specialized Burrells, could bring 520,000 points of damage. You had the Katangas, which is the next best thing you have for long distance protection, 195,000. And then you have your really large capital class attackers, which could project 342 because they're using newer generation launchers, which are 171. So the problem with this is when you look at this is significantly weaker than what other races' front lines are able to do when it comes to long distance. So the Romulans can out-torpedo the Klingon Empire. The Cardassians, probably not. Federation, definitely. And some of the other minor races might be able to as well. That's why they built this weird bird of prey, is because they needed something that could bring lots of torpedo power to the battlefield. Because the Katanga is old, it doesn't have anything, it can't bring anything to the fight besides those torpedoes. And then obviously using K-Vorts to do this is a huge waste of the K-Vort. The K-Vort is a deep space hunter. It's designed to hunt ships one-on-one. It's designed to be in packs to take on battleships in groups and then take them out. It's not designed to sit there in the back and launch torpedoes. All right, so next on our list are the commonplace Klingon torpedoes that are 2nd generation, but are modern standards. It is a KP-10, has a power output of 171,000, and can shoot 8 times. This is a very, very powerful launcher. This is bringing a lot of damage to your enemy. Incredibly powerful. Alright, so we're all familiar with the history of the Klingon Empire and the Federation. We know there was an alliance, there was a sharing of technology. This new variant torpedo launcher can launch up to 8 torpedoes. It's got to be based off the MK60s and MK70s, because those can launch 10, this can launch 8, very close in power. So you're in a combat situation, this is the way the torpedo launcher will work. So depending on what class of ship you have the Katangas, we have obviously the Vorchas. No matter how many torpedo launchers you have a limit to 8. So you can power enough, so if you have 3 launchers like the Vorcha, you can maybe fire 1 out of each up until you get 8 out, or you could fire 4 from 1, or you could fire all 8 from 1 torpedo in the front. It doesn't really matter. But the point is the maximum power projection that the torpedo launcher is getting from the newer generation is 1,368,000. Really, really, really powerful. You could just flat out kill most ships with this. Alright, and before we go on, let's kind of look back at what we're seeing here so we have an understand of the evolution of the torpedo launchers. So obviously we see the Katanga at the top there, very powerful, 195, very good for its time period. Then we have the next generation, the 8-shot, using old technology, very impressive, 520,000, very good. Unfortunately, it was designed in more of the modern time, so it slightly starts to fall behind. Now you have your standard launcher, 171, pretty much garbage at this point. We have your standard launcher, you know, that you see, you have the KVOR, which has 2 standard launchers, which is 342,000. That's honestly a standard amount of firepower you would expect from a destroyer of the time period of the 2430s and the 2430s. Well, when you start getting into the 2450s and then obviously the 2460s, we start to slip off. So I think this is kind of a nice diagram to kind of give you an idea of what you're seeing here. So you can see that the Katanga is more advanced than the Constitution in torpedo technology. We can see that there is a dip for a while there where they would be outgunned by Constellations by a significant amount. Then they came up with this new bird of prey, and then they're coming in there where they can overcome a Constitution class. Then the Galaxies come in, and you can see that for a long time there, they cannot even come close. Then they get the Vorcha, and they get the Nigvar, and then they're in Galaxy class range. But even once they get to that point, then you get into newer generation launchers like on the Sovereign. Minus quantum torpedoes, it could still launch 12. So once again, Klingon torpedo technology starts to decrease for the time period. So what we've learned is that the Klingon Empire was very focused on torpedo technology in the beginning. Then they became very, very, very dependent on cloaking devices and disruptors. And they no longer cared very much about the torpedo technology. They let it stagnate. They realized the stagnation was a problem. Then they started using modern launchers again. Fortunately, they had modern launchers by the Dominion time. So my final opinion, by the time of the Dominion War, Klingon technology is less advanced than an MK80, which is a complete generation behind in torpedo technology. The Klingon Empire's technology level is stayed at the 2460s of the Starfleet era, and by the time of the Dominion War and after the Dominion War, Klingon technology had stagnated significantly in torpedo technology. I do respect the KP-10 as a good launcher during the Dominion War, but when you look at Federation launchers, the MK-80, which is almost 10 years old at this point, is more powerful than their most advanced launcher. And then when you factor in the next level, which is on the Sovereign, then it's even further behind. And then you factored in quantum torpedo launchers, which are seen on Sovereign, and even smaller ships like the Defiant, you then see the KP-10 is inadequate for the job. The Klingon Empire's torpedo technology is stagnated and has fallen in the lines of almost pathetic. Now, when I say this, I do understand this is going to offend some of you guys, but I want you to think about this. The Kavor class is one of the modern Klingon weapons, right? It's using 2 standard torpedo launchers, projection of 342,000. This is made during the same time that the Galaxy-class starships are being produced. The Constellation from Kirk's era can launch 6 standard full-ton torpedoes. That projection is 390,000. This ship doesn't even have the firepower of a Constellation class at long distance. Now, remember, we are talking about torpedo technology. We are not talking about the disruptors. We are not talking about the shields. We are merely talking about the torpedo technology. I'm not saying that Klingon ships are bad. I'm merely stating when it comes to torpedo technology, they're looking pretty pathetic. So I want to bring an argument to why I think that the Katanga is actually a decent ship for the Klingon front lines. Even though it's an old ship, the Klingons don't have projection of long distance power at all. They have only the Vorchas, and then they have the Nigvars. Now, the Nigvars are super rare and are rarely ever seen leaving Klingon space. Now, the Vorchas are built in decent numbers, but there's not enough of them to go around. And so you're going to be reliant on the Katangas. It's not a lot of power, but it's much better than what you're getting with just the standard barrels, which is what most of your fleet is going to derive of. And we don't really see the K-Vorts during the Dominion War for whatever reason. I don't think that they would have been very efficient. I've talked about this in the previous video, but I mean, a lot of fighting the Dominion doesn't have cloaking devices. So decloaking, launching torpedoes, and then getting away is a really effective strategy against them. So unfortunately, the K-Vorts are not going to be very beneficial. You're going to get a lot more, I don't know, projection or firepower, because if you use, so let's just say you decloak and you fire. You're not even going to bring the shields down of a Dominion bug ship. So let's think about the Jem'Hadar fighter. Let's think about what the Klingons can do. So Katanga, you can fire your 3 torpedoes. You're going to do moderate damage to the shields. That's it. Standard Burrell, 1 torpedo. You're going to do even less damage than the Katanga can. Now you get into the K-Vort. Now the K-Vort can hit it for 342,000. That's enough to bring down the shields and damage the hull slightly. When you get to the modified bird of prey, they can launch 8 torpedoes. They're old, but that's 520,000. That's a kill. So that thing can kill a Dominion bug ship by decloaking and firing, say, torpedoes, blow it up, smithereens, long distance, get away. Fantastic for killing Dominion ships. We start looking at the Katangas, or not the Katangas, the K-Vorts, or not K-Vorts. So Katangas, K-Vorts aren't really doing much of anything. When it comes to the Vorcha class cruisers, the Vorcha class cruiser can obviously blow up the Dominion ship, no problem at all. It could probably destroy 2 of them, flat out, right then and there. Obviously, the Nigvar, same thing. So really, you only have 3 ships in the Klingon arsenal that can attack Dominion ships from long distance and be effective. All the other ships are ineffective against destroying the Dominion at long distance, because the Klingons' projection of power is with the disruptors and up close. Unfortunately for the Klingons, Jem'Hadar fighters' projection of power is the exact same thing. They have very little long distance projection power, tons of projection power at close range. It's the best killing ship for the Klingon Empire. So the Dominion bug ship is a Klingon killer, period. I hope you guys have enjoyed yourself. If you have any alterations, any comments, or anything that you want me to make videos about, please make a comment. If you have any suggestions, make a comment. If you have any thoughts about projection of the power that I've shown with the Klingon technology, do you agree or disagree? I'd be really curious about your guys' thoughts and what your opinions are. And with that being said, I'll see you all in the future. Thank you for watching Trek Wars. If you like this material, please subscribe and make a comment. And with that being said, victory is life.